So we all want to know what the healthiest thing is, whether that's peanut butter, whole grain toast, low fat yogurt, chia seeds, smoothies, smoothie bowls, whatever it is. But what if instead we focused on one of the leading causes of diseases, our diet? Some of us really couldn't care less about our diet and just want to eat to enjoy food, and that's fine. But if that's the case, this video probably isn't for you and you should probably stop watching right about now. Our diet is our very own crystal ball that predicts how we're going to go throughout life and whether we're going to encounter any disease, illness, or ill health. I'm just going to very quickly run through some stats. So out of all the diseases within Australia, 2/3 or 66% of these are related to diet. These are called diet-related diseases. Examples of these are type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and cancer. Basically, without explaining it in too much depth, diet-related diseases means that we have a say in whether they affect us or not. So in 2017 in Australia, 63.4% of our population was overweight or obese. 11.3% of our population suffered from hypertension, and 1 person was diagnosed with cancer every 4 minutes. In 2016, cardiovascular disease killed 1 person every 12 minutes, and heart disease was the single leading cause of death within Australia. And 1 person every 5 minutes develops type 2 diabetes. Now, we don't have to be Einstein to figure out that those statistics are awful. So the chances are that you know someone or multiple people that have at least one of these conditions. Now, what happens when you find out, or someone that you know finds out that they have one of these conditions? They'll go to the doctor. What does the doctor do? They give them a pill. Now, don't get me wrong, pills are good. We need medicine. We do really need medicine. If you're dying of cancer, you need medicine. You need chemotherapy, you need radiation. But like I said before, these diseases are related to our diet. They're literally called diet-related diseases, which means we have a say in how we prevent them, and in some ways, which I'll explain later, we can't even treat them. So this topic is no doubt something that I'm super passionate about. Now, I form my opinion and my beliefs off research, and that's what I'm bringing to you guys today. Now, I don't want to come across as too preachy or anything like that, but basically I've known this information for the past year or two when I've been studying it and researching it, and I really believe that it's beneficial for everyone to know about it, as there's many reasons why we don't know some of the information I'm going to share with you today, which I'll touch on later. So yeah, I'm no doctor, but I really want everyone to know about these facts and things that I found out, so then once you know about them, you can make the choice on what you do. But the thing is, so many people don't know about this, which is why I'm really making this video and trying to spread the message. So in reality, no one has time to sit down and read the China study, read over reviews, read over articles and journals, and watch heaps and heaps of documentaries. So that's basically what I'm trying to do today. I'm trying to condense the main points of information from what I've learned into this video for you guys. Now, before we dive into it, I'm going to give you an analogy. So when you're driving your car, you run out of petrol. What do? You go to the petrol station. Do you put water in your car? You don't. You put petrol in there because your car only runs off petrol. If you were to put water in your car, number one, it wouldn't run efficiently or probably run at all. Number two, it would blow up. Our bodies are exactly the same. What we put into our system or into our tank is going to determine how it effectively functions, and in the long term affects whether we're going to blow up or encounter any illnesses or disease. Now, there is so much information out there today on what diet's best, whether that's the ketogenic diet, the low carb diet, the paleo diet. There's so many, and it can just become so overwhelming and you're not sure what to do. One diet, or actually I'm not even going to call it a diet, one lifestyle that I'm going to talk about today is called the whole food plant-based diet. But to start off, I'm just going to give you a few studies. So the first study was done by a doctor called Dr. T. Colin Campbell. He was over in the Philippines, and he was observing that there was heaps and heaps of the rich families. They had children who were suffering from liver cancer. Now, to him, this was an instant light bulb, as liver cancer generally affects adults at older age. So it was like a click, something seriously is wrong here. So what he originally thought, he thought that it was due to a toxin called aflatoxin. Now, this is found in corn and peanuts, so peanut butter, that sort of thing, that the kids were consuming high amounts of at that time. But what he also observed was that all the rich families were consuming high amounts of meat, or more than the general population, as that's what they could afford. So he took this study back into the labs, and he compared the amount of aflatoxin and the amount of protein on some rats, just looking at the rates of liver cancer. So to do this, he had 2 groups. He fed both the groups the same amount of aflatoxin, but what he did modify was the amount of protein. Now the type of protein that he used was a protein called casein, which makes up about 80 to 85% of cow's milk. So in one group he fed them 20% casein, and in the other group he fed them 5%. Now what he actually found from this study, as you'll see as I'll put a diagram up here, he found that the rats who were having the 20% casein or the 20% protein out of their whole caloric intake in their diet, every single one of them developed liver cancers or its precursor tumours. All of the rats in the 5% group that were having 5% casein didn't have any sign of tumours or precursor tumours. What he wanted to do was he wanted to take this study a step further. So what he did now is he had all the rats in one group, and he wanted to see what would happen if he fluctuated the amounts of protein that the rats were given. So over 12 weeks, at 3-week intervals, he'd fluctuate them. So he'd go 20% protein, 5%, 20%, 5%. Now I'll put the diagram up here of the results. So the conclusion that he came to was that the amount of protein that he was feeding them could effectively switch on and off cancer tumour cell growth. So this was a bit of evidence and information that he needed that showed him that you can actually turn cancer cell growth on and off, and it was all based on their diet and protein intake. So as you can see in a graph that I'll put up here, that he compared the 20% protein levels of casein to the 20% level of a plant-based protein source, and he used gluten. So this graph shows that there was no development of any of the cancer cell growth from a plant-based protein source. So the second bit of information I'm going to show you is this graph that I'll put up here. So in World War II, the Germans occupied Norway. One of the first things that they did was they confiscated all the livestock and farming animals. This gave the Germans leverage, as they had all the good protein sources for their soldiers to stay strong, whereas all the Norwegians were forced to eat mainly a plant-based diet, as that was all that was around and that was all they could afford. So this graph shows the deaths from heart attack and stroke. So as we can see, between 1927 and 1939, there's an increasing trend in mortality rate. In 1939, this is when the Germans came and occupied Norway. And between 1940 and 1945, we can see there's a decrease in rates of mortality. So in 1945, when the Germans leave, the Norwegians obviously have access back to their meat and dairy, and so the increase in mortality of heart disease and stroke continues. So next I'm going to talk about osteoporosis. So we're all told that we need our dairy because it has a calcium in it, and that's going to stop us from getting osteoporosis when we're older. So in theory, the countries who have the highest intake of calcium or dairy products should have a lower rate of osteoporosis, right? But if you actually look at stats, you'll see that the countries with the highest rate of dairy intake actually have the highest rates of osteoporosis, and this is shown through hip fractures. So I'll pop that graph up here for you guys to look at. What actually happens when we consume dairy is it causes an acid-like environment within the body. Now our body wants to maintain homeostasis and stay at the correct pH level. So the body's also really good at balancing itself out. So when we have something acidic, it's going to want to alkalize itself normally. It's not relying on us to eat something else to alkalize it. It's going to do it as quick as it can because it doesn't like the environment that it's in. The body draws on a readily available acid-like buffer, and this is actually calcium from our bones. Now calcium is super alkaline, and it's one of the most easily accessible things for the body to get its hands on. So when we're consuming heaps and heaps of dairy, our acidity levels are going up. Our body's trying to balance it back out, so what's it going to do? It's going to draw our calcium out of the bones to buffer it back up and keep it at a balance. Of course, this weakens the bones, which is why we're seeing the really high levels of hip fractures. So before we move on, I'm just going to put up a few more graphs so you guys can have a look at them. So if you're sitting there like I was the first time I was exposed to this information, I was thinking, well, why the hell didn't we know about this earlier? So now I'm just going to take you through a few points, and I think you'll understand why. The Dietitians Association of Australia has some corporate sponsors as follows: Meat and Livestock Australia, Nestle, Dairy Australia, the Egg Nutrition Council. Another one of our big influencers is the Heart Foundation. One of their major sponsors is Sanitarium. So of course these organisations aren't going to say anything negative about the companies that fund them, or else they wouldn't have any money to operate. So I'm not going to bombard you guys with any more information, but I'm just going to give you a few solutions if you like. Now I think the data does show enough that unfortunately consuming animal protein does have a negative effect on our health. This is what I was talking about before when I said consuming a whole food plant-based diet. So a lot of people say consuming a vegan diet is what's good for you, and yes it is, but consuming a vegan diet doesn't have to be healthy. So you could be on a vegan diet and you could be having Fruit Loops, oat milk, sugar on top, then maybe like some hot chips, and then some shapes. Like, you could be having heaps of things. So just eating vegan doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating healthy. But a whole food plant-based diet basically is as the title sounds. It's focused on whole foods and it is plant-based. So basically it avoids all refined foods, so that's refined flours, refined sugars, and processed foods. The whole food plant-based diet consists of whole foods, so that's your grains, your legumes, your fruit and your veg, your nuts, your seeds, all those sorts of things. And to be honest, until I changed over to this diet, I didn't even realize how much you could make out of whole foods that were plants until I was forced to sort of experiment with it all. So that's actually one of the reasons that I made my Instagram account and my YouTube account, Nourishing Tay. Now, a big question that might have popped into your head was, what about protein? I'm just gonna pop a few pics up here that will explain it without me even having to go into words. Now, these people I know, they were actually consuming whole foods as well. Anyway, if you have made it this far through, I hope that you're not thinking that I'm talking absolute smack or thinking that I'm being a preacher, because I promise I'm really trying not to. I'm just trying to get the information out there, as it's something that I'm super passionate about and something I wish I'd known earlier. Now, if you guys would be interested in learning a little bit more about this, just leave a comment below or let me know and I'd be happy to talk to you personally. Or if you want to do further research on your own, the China Study is a really, really fascinating and eye-opening book. It does go for a little while, but it's definitely a good read. As well as if you're into documentaries, Forks Over Knives is on Netflix, and that's a really, really good watch as well. Thanks for watching, guys.